Alright, here's your pitch for Creed 2. Adonis Creed, upset after his loss at the end of Creed, goes off by himself, goes off to find himself, joins the Iraq War, all of that good stuff, comes back looking like this to fight Drago's son. Now there's your movie. Go. So Black Panther tells the story of Prince T'Challa as he becomes King T'Challa, King of Wakanda, just in time for Wakanda to be torn apart in chaos by some shifting loyalties, a black market dealer, and one pissed off ex-Wakandan. Well, let's hear everybody, probably the most anticipated MCU movie or comic book movie in general of 2018. People have been dying for this movie to come out for many different reasons. Some of us just saw how badass the character was in Captain America Civil War and wanted to see where he was going to go from that. Some of us grew up reading the comic books of Black Panther, and some of us are just waiting for a movie like this to have the representation that Black Panther has to finally come to the big screen. And I'm pleased to say, for the most part, everybody that has been anticipating this movie I think is going to really enjoy the final product. They're going to walk away really liking Black Panther. You know, before I even get into my pros and cons, I will say this. I saw this movie opening night, the very first showing at my theater in my town. It was a packed out theater, which is very unusual, if not something that never happens on a Thursday night showing. Completely packed out theater, tons of different people, all different races, seeing this movie, and everybody loved it. There was so much excitement, there was so much enjoyment in the air. Everybody erupted into applause at the very end. For a movie like this that's just such a landmark movie and such an important movie to come out as far as the representation side of things, it was such a cool experience to be there opening night, just to kind of feel that in the air as everybody got to see this movie for the first time. With all that being said, I will make this recommendation though. Please try to manage your expectations for this movie. There's a ton of excitement, there's a ton of hype, there is a ton of just huge expectations for this movie that I'm afraid a lot of you are going to overextend, and you're going to walk into this movie and walk out disappointed because of all of the ratings going on right now. Best of all time, best MCU movie of all time, best villain of all time. Just relax. There's a ton of excitement over this movie. Just let it be that way. But if you walk into this movie expecting the greatest comic book movie of all time, I promise you, you're going to be disappointed. Walk in expecting a very good comic book movie, and you will get that. Starting right off with the things that I liked about Black Panther, first of all is the characters. This movie is jammed full of great characters. From T'Challa himself, who's just a really rich, interesting character. You get to see a little bit of his journey in Captain America Civil War, and in Black Panther you get to see more of the crescendo of that, where you have the death of his father, and he has to rise to the occasion of becoming king of this land in a time where he just wasn't ready to be king and wasn't expecting to be king for so long, and he has all these different things that he's suddenly responsible for while learning how to be the Black Panther.
Crow has escaped our pursuits for almost 30 years. Not capturing him is perhaps my father's greatest regret. I wish to bring Crow back here to stand trial.
Wakanda does not need a warrior right now. We need a king.
And while learning how to be a king and how to, shift all the loyalties and get everybody on his side when everybody wasn't necessarily on the side of his father, even though it seemed like they were going to be. Tons of internal conflict going on with that character, which made things really interesting. You move on to Killmonger, who's the main villain in this, played by Michael B. Jordan. Really, really good villain for the MCU. I'm not going to go as far to say he's the best of the MCU, because I don't think he is. I'm definitely not going to go as far as say he's one of the best villains in comic book movies of all time, because again, I don't think he is, but he's a very good villain, and I think that that's enough. That's what this movie was going for. They weren't going to reinvent the wheel with villains. So with Killmonger, he's a very entertaining villain. He's a very threatening villain. He has a lot of really good motivations that you can get behind to a degree. He kind of has the same ideologies as T'Challa himself. He just goes about it in completely ass-opposite ways of T'Challa. And that's the best way to have an antagonist for your protagonist, is somebody that has very similar goals in mind, but just wants to go about it in the complete wrong way, and they don't see it as the wrong way. That is the way that you have effective villainy and effective antagonistic relationships in movies. So Killmonger, definitely a very good villain, and again, huge breath of fresh air for an MCU movie to have a villain that's not just bent on world domination because his mustache twirls. And all the rest of the supporting cast in this movie is awesome. You have Michonne playing basically the big general, the one who's pretty much in charge of keeping track of T'Challa and protecting him. She is badass. She's probably the most badass character in the movie. All she's got is this golden spear, and she beats more ass with that golden spear than I think T'Challa does in the entire movie. With all of the inner workings of his Black Panther suit, all the technology aside, she kicks the most ass. You got Lupita Nyong'o as kind of the love interest, and she's like a spy for Wakanda. Very entertaining character and one beautiful woman, if I do say so myself. You got T'Challa's sister, who's more like the Q to his James Bond. She's the one that kind of creates all the technology and shows him how the new suits work and everything. Very entertaining character. And their sibling rivalry and their sibling banter back and forth is one of the more entertaining parts of the movie. But the biggest star of Black Panther, in my opinion, the biggest character of Black Panther, is the country itself of Wakanda. Talk about great world building in this movie. From the time that it starts to the time that it ends, it just does so many great things about building this world and this culture and all the different tribes of Wakanda. That's the most entertaining part of this movie for me and the biggest victory of this movie. It's got such a rich place of Wakanda, so many rich things you could do as far as story and lore and everything with Wakanda. You could almost set Black Panther outside of the MCU and have your own little mini universe with that country alone. There is so much there. It is such a huge open side of the MCU now that it's almost as equal and vast as the cosmic stuff that got opened up with Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's just one country. I also found the story to be really entertaining and a really big breath of fresh air for a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. Usually a lot of these, if you've seen any of my past 4 or 5, maybe even 6 Marvel Cinematic Universe reviews, although I still love these movies and I still really enjoy this universe, I'm starting to take a lot of issue with just how formulaic they all feel. They all feel like an Iron Man movie. They all feel like an Ant-Man movie to a degree, with just small little different flavors here and there. Black Panther really sets itself apart from all of that. It has its own feel, has its own tone, it has its own world, and the story itself is very different from your typical comic book movie too, because it's just about a king and his kingdom. I've seen a lot of comparisons to The Lion King, and that's a very accurate comparison, without feeling like it's ripping off The Lion King. It's just about a father who falls, the son has to rise to the occasion to take over this kingdom and set it on the right course, while somebody trying to set it on the wrong course is trying to invade. That's about where the similarities end, but it works to make it a very unique and entertaining comic book film.
Hey, look at your suit. You've been taking bullets, charging it up with kinetic energy.
Put around the truck. Ready, go!
And the last thing that I really want to praise while talking about something that I usually harp on with most MCU movies that they get right here, the humor. One of the biggest things that have annoyed me about the past handful of MCU movies is that it feels like since Guardians of the Galaxy, they're just trying to shove humor into every weak point, every little dead spot, every single 5th or 6th line of the movies usually feel like they have to throw some kind of a cheap joke in there, and maybe half of them land and half of them feel completely out of place. Black Panther, the humor is utilized almost perfectly. There's not a ton of it, but whenever it does come around, it is effective and it makes sense within the scene that it's in. You get great character interaction that has some good humor here and there, but it doesn't overshadow the stakes and the story that's going on. It doesn't overshadow the themes that they're going for, like when they're going for sadness or tension. It doesn't get ruined by a cheap joke. The humor is really well written and really well placed in Black Panther. And I'll give that credit to Ryan Coogler as the director of this. This guy is just an awesome director. He's 3 for 3 for me. I think this is probably my least favorite of his 3 movies, as much as I like this Black Panther movie, but the other 2 movies he's done are just so incredible that that's not a negative on this movie whatsoever. But Ryan Coogler really knows how to do characters. He really knows how to tell a story. He really knows how to develop drama, develop tension, have some humorous spots here and there while mixing all of that together to make an entertaining but well-made movie. And a lot was on his shoulders to bring this movie to the screen because, like I said, there's a ton of excitement, a ton of anticipation, just a ton of people that were just dying for this movie to come out, and he got to be the one to bring it, and he brought it. He brought a really good movie. He delivered what was promised, and you got to give props to Ryan Coogler for that. Now moving into some of my negatives, while talking about Ryan Coogler, how great of a director he is with drama, with characters, with tension, with story, and all that kind of stuff, I think this movie shows that he's not quite the most capable action director yet. The fight scenes that are just hand-to-hand combat, which are similar to what he had to do in Creed, are great. But everything that has to be like comic book superhero style, where it's CGI and there's a lot of flips and a lot of over-the-top action, I think that's where this movie really starts to slip, and that's one of the main negatives I have for Black Panther. The CGI is very iffy. For nowadays, it stands out really bad if you have wonky CGI, because CGI has come so far to the point of almost feeling real with something like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, or even some of the other Marvel Cinematic Universe movies like Captain America Civil War. But whenever you get into Black Panther and you see these CGI rhinos that look straight out of a cartoon, whenever the Black Panther movements and the Killmonger movements during a fight seem almost like a video game, it stands out a lot, especially with a grounded, more gritty movie like this. Also, some of the flaws that I had with the characters, as much of a great character that T'Challa is and Black Panther is, as cool as a character as he is, as rich of a character he is, and as much as the story really does focus on his journey and his struggles, I feel like the dude gets overshadowed left and right in this movie. He's like the 5th most interesting character in his own movie, and I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if they were going for that to more just focus on building Wakanda and showing how many great characters are inside Wakanda, since we're going to see Black Panther in Infinity War and all the other little team-up movies. They wanted to shine the light on some of the other characters that you won't see unless it's a Black Panther movie, but it just felt weird to me that I'm watching a movie called Black Panther, and Black Panther is one of the least interesting parts to me. I'm seeing, you know, Michonne's character, and I love what's going on with her. Lupita Nyong'o is really intriguing. You get to Killmonger especially, and it's like, man, I want to see more of that guy. And there's a decent little chunk of the movie when Black Panther kind of takes a back seat and lets the other characters' stories start to roll through. And for a movie that's called Black Panther, you would think you'd be like, where's Black Panther? What the hell's going on? And I wouldn't feel like that. He was gone and I was fine with it. Now, while I touched on Killmonger being a really good villain, a really effective villain, having great motivations, being a really effective antagonist for our character, I think one of the main things that holds him back from me saying that he's one of the greatest villains of all time, or he's one of the top 3 MCU villains, is that you don't get enough of him, in my opinion. He doesn't really show up as the main villain of this movie until about halfway, because you have Ulysses Claw, played by the great Andy Serkis, which is a really entertaining side villain, by the way, which I forgot to mention. He is also chewing up the scenery and loving every minute of it. When you get to actual Killmonger's story, whenever he becomes kind of the focused villain of this movie, the movie's already halfway over, and there's decent spots throughout the last half of the movie where he's kind of not there and they're focusing on other characters but him. I feel like for him to be a more effective villain and to really kind of utilize how interesting of a character and how effective of a character that he is, we should have gotten some more story with what made him become that character, because his motivations are all about kind of his oppressors and the things that really held him back growing up and the things that made life miserable for him growing up, and he's here in Wakanda to right that wrong for everybody else that has those problems. But you don't get to see the events that made him become that character, that made him become the Killmonger. You get little hints of it, and they tell you all of it in exposition, when it would have been much more effective to tack another 10 minutes onto this movie and show scenes of him as a child, of him as a teenager, of him actually going through all these trials and tribulations and what made him psychologically become that character. I think it would have made this movie at least a letter grade higher for me. And my last negatives, which honestly is just a nitpick, because technically these aren't supposed to be really included in on how you critique a movie because they're just extra scenes, but the post-credit scenes in Black Panther to me feel like they should have been a part of the actual ending. They're not like teases for what's to come. They're not like these little Easter eggs or these little fun scenes that you usually see in these post-credit scenes, which make them effective as post and mid-credit scenes. These really feel like scenes that were chopped out of the ending just for the sake of having something mid and post credits. It feels like the ending of the movie would have had a lot more punch if you'd have took those 2 little scenes and edited them in the last 5 to 10 minutes of this movie, and you could have put something else in the mid-credit scene, or even just not had a mid-credit scene, even though Marvel would never do that. It just felt like it was really weird and out of place to me that those were extra scenes and not scenes of the actual story of Black Panther. But with all that being said, guys, I think Black Panther is a very enjoyable movie. It's one of the better MCU movies that I've seen in a long time, because it makes all of the things right that I want it to do right, and it doesn't make any of the errors that I've been bitching about for the past 4 or 5 movies. Big breath of fresh air that Black Panther was as good as it was, but still, it's a really good comic book movie. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's not breaking new ground for comic book storytelling aside from the social stuff, which I totally appreciate. but it's just a really good comic book movie, and I wish people would just let it be a really good comic book movie and not overhype it as this huge cinematic masterpiece, because it's not that. It's just a great comic book movie. So if you're a fan of the MCU, a fan of the Black Panther character, or you just want to see a really entertaining movie this weekend, definitely go out, check out Black Panther in theaters. So what do you guys think of Black Panther? Is this one of your most anticipated movies of the year or the next couple of years? Or is this just another Marvel Cinematic Universe movie to you? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Put all of your thoughts on Black Panther down in the comment section below, guys, and we will talk about it. Please like and share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you want to become a subscriber. And if you want to check out some of my social media links, check the video description below for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and my Patreon page, which is a great way to support this channel, help it grow, and get awesome exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to be a patron. If you want to check out some more of my videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.